Hello, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel. We're continuing our analysis of the frontline situation, and now we're switching to the map. So friends, today's episode will be very interesting, so be sure to watch it all the way through. Today we'll be doing a full review of the month of June, summing up the first month of summer. We'll look at what progress was made on various, or rather all, fronts, what shifts occurred, including any by the Ukrainian armed forces. We'll talk about all of that. Let me start by saying that in terms of numbers, June ranks second in 2025, just behind May. In May, we captured 550 square kilometers, while in June it was 489 square kilometers. So that's 11% less. An 11% drop compared to May. But let's move straight to the details, starting in the north, the Sumy region. Or actually, not even Sumy, but the Kursk region. Remember how much panic and hysteria there was at the beginning of May, including in my own comment section. People were saying we were abandoning the settlement of Tyotkino, our guys were surrounded, that Tyotkino was under Ukrainian control, and so on, a complete disaster. Well, June has passed, and we're summing up the results. And what do we see? We see that the situation has hardly changed over the month. Tyotkino remains fully under our control. Popovo-Ležachi is also still under our control. Novi Put as well remains under our control. Although, to be fair, the Ukrainian armed forces are still trying to advance there, trying to push past the railway, take control of Novi Put, and then move toward Obukovka. But they haven't even managed to cross the border. So in June, all the Ukrainian side was able to achieve here was to slightly expand their zone of control on the southeastern approaches to Tyotkino. But even there, they never actually reached the village. All they managed to take in a month was about 2.5 square kilometers. That's their total result here for June. Now, in Sumy region, this is where we had some success. We advanced all along the Sumy front line with varying levels of effectiveness. In some areas, like the western flank, we pushed forward by 3.5 kilometers. In others, 1.5, 2 kilometers. And in some, even 4 kilometers. Russian forces took control of 5 villages, though one of them was later lost. I'm talking about Andreevka, which I covered in another episode. So in total, we secured 4 villages: Kondratovka, Novonikolaevka, Yablonevka, and Prikhody, or rather Prokhody. In total, just over 50 square kilometers came under our control, specifically 52.2 square kilometers. It's important to note that most of this territory was gained in the first half of June, when we were actively advancing in Sumy region. In the second half, from June 15th onward, we took only 6.5 square kilometers and lost 3 square kilometers, including Andreevka. So net gain in the second half of June was just 3.5 square kilometers. That's why we must admit the Russian offensive in Sumy region has stalled. That said, Ukraine shouldn't celebrate, because just yesterday there was news that for the first time we hit a position with barrel artillery almost within range of Sumy itself, just 1 kilometer from the city limits. So if our forces manage to break through to the Khotin-Krapovshchina line, and sooner or later they will, it will be a death sentence for Sumy. Now let's move on to Russian gains in June in the Kharkiv region. We've summed up the results for Sumy, so let's look at Kharkiv. On the Dvorichansky bridgehead, we advanced by 4.5 kilometers and reached the village of Dolgenkoye, taking it under our control. We also improved our positions near Glushkovka by 1 kilometer and advanced another 3 kilometers in the Novaya Kruglyarkovka area, where we also took the village under control, something confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Defense just a few days ago. To be fair, the Ukrainian armed forces also had gains. They counterattacked in Kharkiv region and had some success. First, near Lozovaya, west of the village, they pushed us back by 1 kilometer. Second, they retook the village of Zeleny Gai, pushing us back by 2 kilometers. The total result, in June, Russian forces took almost 19 square kilometers in Kharkiv region, specifically 18.8. The Ukrainian armed forces, on the other hand, regained 8.5 square kilometers. So the net gain is plus 10.5 square kilometers in favor of the Russian army. Let's continue. In Luhansk region, Russian forces advanced by 3.5 kilometers and took control of the village of Petrovskoye, also known as Grekovka. the total result in Luhansk region in June is 9.5 square kilometers under our control. Ukraine had zero gains there, no advancement on their part in Luhansk. Now let's get to the main action, in Donetsk region. There are many sectors and a lot of activity here. I'll sum everything up at the end, but for now, we'll go sector by sector. Once again, most of the fighting and Russian advances in June happened here, in Donetsk region. Let's begin with the Lyman sector. Here, we advanced south of Redkadub by 5.7 kilometers, crossed the Nitrius River, and entered Karpovka. A large area between the villages of Lipovoye and Kolodyazy was also cleared. The depth of the advance was 3.5 kilometers, and the width of the front, 8.5 kilometers. Altogether, over 30 square kilometers came under Russian control in the Lyman sector in June. The Ukrainian side made no gains there, zero. A very different situation unfolded on the left bank of the Zherebets River, where Ukraine had success. They managed to push us out of central Torskoye, gaining 6.5 square kilometers. Russian forces, meanwhile, expanded control eastward over a 3 square kilometer area. So as you can see, on this particular sector, the left bank of Zherebets, Ukraine gained more. This area ended June under their control, with a net gain of 3.5 square kilometers. This is the only sector of the front where the result favored Ukraine. Next, on the Siversk front, Ukrainian troops also had small gains in the Serebryansky forest area, advancing between 500 and 900 meters on various stretches. The total area they regained in June was 1.5 square kilometers. Russian forces, in turn, advanced westward by 5 kilometers from Belogorovka to Serebryanka, taking control of the village of Grigorovka and entering Serebryanka. Also, south of Verkhnekamenskoye and north of Ivan Daryevka, we advanced by 800 meters. Altogether, in June, Russian forces took 6.5 square kilometers on the Siversk front, while Ukraine gained 1.5 square kilometers. So the net result, 6.5 minus 1.5, is a gain of 5 square kilometers in favor of the Russian army. Some might laugh and say, what's 5 square kilometers in a month? That's nothing. But first of all, it's not nothing, because every meter is earned by our guys with risk and blood. That's number one. And secondly, the Siversk direction has always been a difficult one, for various reasons. The terrain, the command structure, and because Ukrainian elite units are deployed here. Just to give you some perspective, over the entire year of 2024, we captured only 6 square kilometers here. Again, over an entire year. And now we're seeing similar results in just 1 month. So yes, the numbers might seem small, but the progress is clear. Let's move on. Around Chasiv Yar, positions were improved both in the city itself, particularly in the Chevchenko district, and to the north of the city. However, the city still hasn't been fully taken, although it's clear that the end is near. Of course, we'd all like this Chasiv Yar campaign to finally wrap up in July, or at the latest August, and to end in our favor. On the Kostyantinivka front, there were advances both north of Toretsk and in the pocket between Toretsk and Mnor. North of Toretsk, we advanced more than 5 kilometers in the Dylivka area. Both Velika and Mala Dylivka, also known as Upper and Lower Dylivka, came under Russian control. In addition, the front line was pushed significantly away from Toretsk's northern outskirts. In the pocket between Toretsk and Mnor, we took control of the village of Zarya and advanced 6.5 kilometers, reaching and entering Oleksandro Kalinove. That village is now almost entirely under our control. Fighting is also ongoing in Yablunivka, where we pushed forward 4 kilometers. All in all, the total area that came under Russian control in the Kostyantinivka sector in June was 74.5 square kilometers, to be precise, 74.6. The Ukrainian armed forces had no gains here. The only thing they managed to do was push us back by 400 meters near Oleksandro Kalinove, but Russian troops later recaptured the lost positions. So, a gain of 74.5 square kilometers for us, 0 for them. On the eastern flank of Mnor, we also advanced, pushing more than 6.5 kilometers from the highway in the direction of the village of Koptevo. We also cleared and secured territories to the north and south of this area, totaling 27.4 square kilometers. Again, the Ukrainian side had no gains here, 0. Now on the Pakovsk front, as you know, things are quite difficult, so there weren't any major advances overall. The only progress was in the western sector, so let's go through that. From Chevchenko, we advanced 1.2 kilometers and took control of the Belgika station. We also slightly improved our positions by 600 meters beyond the settlement of Udakshny. And as I mentioned, the only part of the Pokrovsk front with any real success was the western section. There we took control of 2 villages, Novoserhivka and Novonikolayevka, and cleared fields to the south. The total area gained on the Pokrovsk direction in June was 24 square kilometers. The Ukrainian side had 0 gains here as well. They showed some results here back in February and March when they attempted a counter-offensive, but then they ran out of steam. Now it's only the Russian army advancing. We have full initiative. Now to the most important and successful front of June, the south of Donetsk region. Here the numbers are truly impressive. Just look at the progress from our positions as of June 1st to where we are now near Zvezda. Russian troops have been relentlessly pushing westward, breaking through Ukrainian defenses. The depth of our advance here was 25 kilometers. I repeat, 25 kilometers. As for villages, we took control of Orekovo, Alexievka, Zeleny Kut, Novaya Ukrenka, Zaporozhye, Yalta, Zvezda, Komar, Perebudovo, Fyodorovka, and Chevchenko, 11 settlements in total. The overall area gained on the southern Donetsk front in June was a stunning 236 square kilometers, to be exact, 236.1. Now let's summarize the results for the entire Donetsk region. If we combine all the directions, Lyman, Siversk, Kostiantynivka, Chasiv Yar, Pokrovsk, and so on, we get the following outcome. Ukraine took back 8 square kilometers in Donetsk region in June. That means our net gain is plus 393 square kilometers in favor of the Russian army. As I said earlier, Donetsk was the main battlefield in June, so it's no surprise that the results here far exceed those in Sumy, Kharkiv, or Zaporizhzhia. Speaking of which, let's move to Zaporizhzhia next. Here we had minor gains on several sections. First, near Huliaipol, we advanced 1.5 kilometers and entered the village of Malinivka. At present, we control about half the village. There were also gains near the town of Orikiv. There, we entered Malatokmachka and advanced further south of the village. In Kamianske, we managed to cross the river and secure a foothold on the right bank. The total area gained in Zaporizhzhia region in June was 7.2 square kilometers. Ukraine also had gains in one area, near Shabaki, where they pushed us back by 800 meters. The total area recaptured by Ukraine here was 0.7 square kilometers. That's their entire result in June. So the net result is plus 6.5 square kilometers in favor of the Russian army. And as for Kherson region, there's really nothing to report. Neither side made any advances there. So here's the overall result for June. Russian forces took control of 489 square kilometers, while Ukrainian forces advanced by nearly 20 square kilometers. Subtracting Ukraine's gains from ours gives a net result of plus 469.5 square kilometers in favor of the Russian army for the month of June. As I said at the beginning of this episode, the second best result of 2025 so far. That concludes our analysis of Russian and Ukrainian advances in June. That's all for today.